John Carter wiped the sweat from his brow as he trudged through the dense underbrush of the alien forest. The distant sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows and bathing the alien foliage in a glow of fading purple light. John paused, his keen ears picking up the distant, unfamiliar sound of something crashing through the atmosphere. Probably just another meteorite, he muttered, resuming his march towards a clearing he used as a campsite. As he approached, however, the smell of scorched metal and ozone filled the air, a stark contrast to the usual musty earthiness of the forest floor. Curiosity piqued, John veered off his path, following the scent and the thick plumes of smoke rising against the twilight sky. The sight that met him was unlike anything he'd witnessed before. A spacecraft, its sleek metallic body grotesquely twisted and embedded in the earth. Flames licked its edges, and its surface was etched with symbols that shimmered even in the dim light. John circled the wreckage cautiously, his old military instincts kicking in. "Hello? Is anyone there?" His voice felt oddly muffled in the thick air as he approached the open hatch of the craft. From within the shadows of the wreckage, a feeble moan answered. John hurried inside, finding the source of the sound. A woman, or at least a humanoid figure that resembled one, crumpled against the controls. Her skin was a pale, iridescent blue, and her clothes were of a material he couldn't recognize. "Hey, can you hear me?" John reached out, checking for injuries. She stirred under his touch, her eyes fluttering open. They were a vivid violet, filled with confusion and pain. "I do not understand." Her voice was melodic, but weak. "It's all right. You're safe now," John reassured her, though he wasn't quite sure of the truth of his words. "I'm John. I need to get you out of here before the rest of this thing goes up in flames." With careful efficiency born of years in survival situations, John supported her weight as they exited the craft. Once safely away from the immediate danger, he set her down gently against a tree stump. "What's your name?" John asked as he scanned the horizon for any signs of pursuit or further danger. "Lyra," she whispered, clutching her side in evident pain. "I am Princess Lyra of the Zarathian Empire." "Princess, huh?" John chuckled softly, more to himself than to her. "Well, Your Highness, welcome to my planet." Lyra looked around, her gaze taking in the towering trees and the alien sky with a mix of awe and fear. "I must return. My people are in danger." "We need to fix you up first," John said, examining her side. "You've got some bad injuries. Let me take care of those, and then we can figure out your next move." "Thank you, John," Lyra said, a trace of relief in her tone. "I am far from home, and I fear those who pursue me may not stop until they find me." "We'll worry about that later. For now, let's focus on getting you patched up." John began to rummage through his pack for his first aid kit. As he cleaned and bandaged her wounds, the stars began to emerge in the sky above, shining down on the unlikely pair. Here on this remote planet, two beings from vastly different worlds worked together, united by circumstance and a shared need to survive. "Once you're feeling stronger, you'll have to tell me more about where you come from," John said, securing a bandage. "Sounds like you've got quite a story." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "And I wish to learn about your world as well, John. It seems we have much to teach each other." Together, they prepared for the night, unaware of how deeply their fates had already begun to intertwine. As dawn broke through the dense canopy of alien trees, John Carter and Princess Lyra were already on the move. Lyra's wounds had been hastily bandaged the night before, and though she was far from fully healed, her determination to put distance between herself and any pursuers propelled her forward. "We need to keep moving," John advised, scanning the terrain for any signs of danger. "The sooner we get you to a safer place, the better." Lyra nodded, her face set with a grim determination that belied her physical pain. "The Xandarian Syndicate will not stop searching. They are relentless." John looked over at her, his expression curious. "Who are these Xandarians, and why are they after you?" Lyra's eyes darkened with a mix of fear and anger. "They are a faction within my empire, hungry for power and control. They believe that by capturing me, they can force my uncle, the Emperor, to abdicate the throne in their favor." Understanding dawned on John. "A political hostage, then. That's a rough spot to be in." They continued in silence for a while, John leading the way through underbrush and over streams, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. Suddenly, Lyra stopped, her hand reaching out to grip John's arm. "Wait," she whispered urgently. "Something is not right." John froze, his senses heightening. In the distance, the faint hum of engines grew steadily louder. He looked at Lyra, who nodded gravely. "They've found us." Without a word, John grabbed her hand and pulled her along, breaking into a run. They dove into a thicker part of the forest as the sound of the engines grew into a deafening roar overhead. Peeking through the leaves, John saw several small crafts, sleek and menacing, sweeping the area. "We need to split them up," John said, thinking quickly. "You go north towards the river. I'll head west and try to lead them away from you." Lyra's violet eyes flashed with panic. "No, I can't let you do that. It's too dangerous alone." "It's the only way," John insisted. "Once they're off your trail, circle back to the clearing we passed earlier. I'll meet you there before sunset." Reluctantly, Lyra nodded, understanding the necessity of the plan. They shared a quick, firm handshake before parting ways, each slipping silently into the underbrush. John moved quickly, using his knowledge of the terrain to his advantage. He dodged through the trees, making enough noise to ensure the drones followed him. Meanwhile, Lyra used her alien agility to navigate through the forest, her mind focused on survival and the hope of reuniting with John by day's end. After a harrowing hour of cat and mouse with the drones, John found a steep ravine and without hesitation slid down it, narrowly avoiding a drone that zoomed overhead. He tucked himself under an overhang, holding his breath as the drones searched. Eventually, the hum of the engines faded, and John allowed himself a moment to rest. His thoughts drifted to Lyra, hoping she had made it to the river safely. The stakes were higher than ever, and he knew that the real challenge lay ahead. As the sun began its descent, John made his way back to the clearing, constantly vigilant. As he approached, he saw Lyra waiting for him, a look of relief washing over her features when she saw him. "You made it," she breathed, her voice a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We both did," John replied with a tired smile. "But we're not out of the woods yet. Let's keep moving." Together, they set off once more, knowing that each step took them deeper into a conflict that spanned far beyond the quiet solitude of John's planet. Their journey had just begun, and the path ahead promised to be fraught with danger and uncertainty. As the evening mist settled over the unfamiliar terrain, John and Lyra found temporary refuge under the broad leaves of a zarland tree. The air was heavy with the scent of moist earth, a stark contrast to the dry, crisp atmosphere John was accustomed to back on Earth. Lyra, still catching her breath from the day's exertions, seemed contemplative, her gaze lost in the dancing shadows cast by their small fire. John broke the silence, his voice low and concerned. "Lyra, you need to tell me more about these Xandarians. If we're going to outsmart them, I need to know what we're up against." Lyra nodded, her eyes meeting his. "The Xandarian Syndicate is a powerful cabal within the Zarathian Empire. They seek to overthrow my uncle, the Emperor. Their methods are ruthless, relying on espionage and assassination to achieve their goals." "And your uncle? What kind of ruler is he?" John asked, trying to understand the political landscape that had led to such turmoil. "He is a fair and just ruler, loved by many. But his policies often interfere with the ambitions of powerful factions like the Xandarians." Lyra's voice held a mix of pride and worry. John absorbed this information, piecing together the political puzzle. "And they think by capturing you, they can control him." "Exactly," Lyra confirmed. "I am the only heir to the throne. My safety is leverage against him." The gravity of her situation weighed on John, and he shifted his position, throwing another branch onto the fire. "What about your people? Do they support you?" "Many do, but fear often silences their voices. The Xandarians are too powerful, and their reach is too pervasive. That's why I had to escape, to seek help." John nodded, understanding the stakes. "You mentioned seeking help. What kind of help were you hoping to find?" Lyra hesitated, then spoke. "There are those within the Empire who resist the Syndicate's influence. I was to meet with them on a neutral planet to discuss support. But my ship was sabotaged before I could arrive. That explains the crash landing here." John looked up at the stars, a map of distant worlds and conflicts painted across the night sky. "You've got a big battle ahead of you." Lyra smiled weakly. John. If you're willing, I need your help. Not just to survive, but to fight back." John met her gaze, his decision clear in his eyes. "I'm with you, Lyra. We'll figure this out together." Their conversation deepened as Lyra shared more about her culture, her planet's technology, and the potential allies they might still contact. John listened intently, fascinated by the complexity and richness of her world, so different yet so bound by familiar struggles of power and resistance. As they planned their next moves, the fire between them crackled, a small beacon of warmth and light in the vast, cold darkness. They were two figures, alone but together, against a backdrop of interstellar intrigue and looming conflict. "Tomorrow we need to reach the outpost," Lyra finally said, pointing towards the north where a faint outline of mountains was visible against the starlit sky. "There we can find equipment to contact my allies?" John nodded, the weight of his new role as protector and ally settling on his shoulders. "We'll make it, Lyra. We have to." With a plan in place and a fragile sense of hope, they settled down to rest, the challenges of the coming days looming large but not insurmountable. As the fire died down to embers, the silence of the night enveloped them. A temporary peace amidst a storm that was far from over. John and Lyra's journey towards the northern outpost was fraught with challenges. The terrain grew increasingly rugged, and Lyra's condition required them to pace themselves carefully. John's skills in navigation and survival were crucial, as each day brought new obstacles, from perilous cliff paths to crossing rapid underground rivers. Despite the hardships, they pushed forward, driven by the urgent need to contact Lyra's allies. One particularly harsh morning, as they ascended a steep incline surrounded by towering ferns, Lyra stopped suddenly, her hand gesturing for silence. She tilted her head, listening. John followed suit, and faint voices carried on. The wind reached his ears. "Someone's up ahead," Lyra whispered, her eyes narrowing. "We need to be careful. It could be a Xandarian patrol." John nodded, leading the way with caution. They veered off the path, using the dense foliage as cover. As they approached, the voices became clearer, and they could discern several figures gathered around a makeshift camp. John caught sight of their armament and gear. Clearly not Xandarian, but possibly local rebels. "Wait here," John instructed softly, leaving Lyra behind a large rock. He circled around, approaching the camp from a different angle to get a better view. As John watched, one of the figures stood up, addressing the group with a tone of urgency. They were discussing supply routes and guard movements, definitely rebels, John concluded. He stepped into the open, hands raised to show he was unarmed. The conversation halted abruptly as all eyes turned to him. A tense moment passed before a tall, rugged figure stepped forward. "Who are you? Speak quickly." "My name is John Carter. I'm not your enemy," John replied calmly. "I'm here with a friend. We need help." Suspicion lingered in the air as a few of the rebels reached for their weapons. John remained still, his gaze steady. "What kind of help?" the leader asked, his posture easing slightly. "We're trying to reach the northern outpost," John explained. "My friend is important. She's being hunted by the Xandarian syndicate." The mention of the Xandarians stirred a murmur among the group. The leader signaled for John to continue. "She's a princess of the Zorathian Empire seeking to contact her allies. We believe you might be fighting for the same cause," John added, watching their reactions closely. The leader's eyes sharpened with interest. "Bring her here. Let's see if her story holds." John returned to where Lyra was hiding and explained the situation. Together, they approached the camp. Lyra's appearance, her regal bearing and the unmistakable elegance despite her rugged circumstances, seemed to sway the rebels. "I am Princess Lyra," she stated, her voice clear and resonant. "I seek your aid to reclaim my rightful place and oppose the tyranny of the Xandarians." A tense discussion ensued among the rebels. Finally, the leader, who introduced himself as Tarn, extended his hand in alliance. "We have common enemies, Princess Lyra," Tarn declared. "The Xandarians threaten all free beings in this sector. We will help you reach the outpost." Grateful, Lyra nodded. "And we will help you in return. Together, we can strengthen our chances against a mutual foe." That night, around a new campfire, the rebels shared their stories with John and Lyra, tales of lost homes and fierce battles. In turn, Lyra spoke of her empire's vast resources and the potential for a broader alliance. As plans were drawn and routes discussed, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bond of their shared struggle against the Xandarians had forged an unexpected alliance between a displaced princess and a band of rugged rebels. Their path forward was clear, and together, they were stronger. The journey to the outpost promised new strategies and new hope, for Lyra, for John, and for the rebellion. With the rebels' support, John and Princess Lyra's journey to the northern outpost grew significantly safer and more strategic. Tarn, the rebel leader, provided them with rugged terrain vehicles capable of handling the uneven and treacherous landscapes they had to traverse. The group, now a convoy of mixed talents and backgrounds, moved swiftly but cautiously, aware that the Xandarian syndicate could strike at any moment. As they neared the outpost, a scout returned breathlessly to the convoy, his news urgent. Xandarian craft spotted approaching from the southeast. Looks like they're coming in fast. Tarn's face set into a grim line. Prepare for engagement. We can't let them reach the outpost first. We need to hold them off. The rebels scrambled to position. John, having been an ex-soldier, took command of one of the defensive units, checking their makeshift barricades and the readiness of their anti-aircraft weapons. Lyra, despite her royal status, insisted on being part of the action. I will not stand back while others fight for my cause, she declared, taking up a position beside John. The sky darkened with the approaching enemy crafts, their sleek, angular forms cutting sharply against the cloud-filled backdrop. The air grew tense, the silence punctuated only by the soft hum of the rebels' weaponry powering up. John glanced at Lyra, his expression one of determination. Stay sharp, we'll get through this. As the first Xandarian craft swooped low, unleashing a barrage of energy pulses towards the ground, John gave the command, and the rebels responded with a fierce volley of their own. The battle was chaotic, with the sky lighting up with the exchange of deadly fire. Lyra proved to be a quick learner, operating one of the anti-air weapons with surprising accuracy. Her first shot clipped a Xandarian drone, sending it spiraling into a nearby hillside with a fiery explosion. Nice shot, John shouted over the roar of continuous fire, offering her a quick grin. The Xandarians were relentless, however. More crafts poured into the area, their tactics becoming increasingly aggressive as they aimed to clear a path for their ground forces. It's now or never, Tarn yelled, signaling for a couple of vehicles armed with heavier artillery to take the lead. John and Lyra covered them, providing suppressing fire as the vehicles targeted the larger enemy crafts. In a desperate move, a Xandarian craft dove directly at their position. John tackled Lyra to the ground, shielding her with his body as the craft crashed nearby, its wreckage thrown across the landscape in a blazing inferno. Dazed but unharmed, John and Lyra quickly regained their footing, resuming their positions as the battle reached its climax. With a coordinated effort from the ground and the strategic use of the terrain to their advantage, the rebels managed to down several more crafts, eventually forcing the Xandarians to retreat. As the last of the enemy crafts disappeared over the horizon, a cheer erupted among the rebels. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Breathing heavily, Lyra turned to John, her eyes shining with a mix of adrenaline and gratitude. We did it, thanks to you and your leadership. John shook his head modestly. We did it together. This is your fight as much as ours. As they joined the other rebels, celebrating their hard-fought victory, the outpost came into view, a beacon of hope on the horizon. Their next move was clear: to fortify, to strategize, and to prepare for the next encounter, now as a united force against the tyranny of the Xandarian syndicate. Upon their victorious arrival at the northern outpost, John and Princess Lyra were met with cheers and a bustling atmosphere of activity. The outpost, a network of fortified buildings nestled between rugged mountains, served as a hub for the rebel alliance. Here, leaders and strategists gathered, united by a common cause to resist the Xandarian syndicate's reach. Tarn led John and Lyra through the main gate, where they were quickly ushered into a strategy room crowded with maps, digital displays, and a holographic center that projected the current state of the galaxy. Rebels of various species worked together, their focus intense as they monitored enemy movements and communicated with other cells. Lyra immediately set to work, engaging with the rebel leaders and sharing the intelligence she had gathered during her escape. Meanwhile, John was drawn to a side meeting where technical experts were analyzing a recovered piece of Xandarian technology. John, take a look at this, one of the technicians called out. He pointed to the intricate device, its surface alive with faintly glowing symbols and a complex network of circuits. We believe this is part of their navigation system, but it's encrypted. John leaned over the device, his previous military experience giving him insight into alien technology. Have you tried a pulsar inversion? It might disrupt the encryption temporarily. The technician nodded, adjusting some parameters. Moments later, the device flickered, and a stream of data began to scroll rapidly across the screen. They quickly captured the data, decrypting bits of tactical information that could prove invaluable. Meanwhile, Lyra convened with the strategists, her voice firm and clear. The Xandarians are mobilizing larger fleets. We need to act quickly if we are to safeguard not only my position, but the freedom of the galaxy. The room filled with nods of agreement. Plans were drawn to initiate counterattacks and to secure vulnerable locations that were critical to the supply chain of the rebellion. As the meeting progressed, one of the rebel scouts rushed in, a palpable urgency in his steps. We've intercepted a transmission. It's about an artifact on Earth that the Xandarians are desperate to find. They believe it holds the power to turn the tide in their favor. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Lyra, then shifted to John. Earth was his home, a planet mostly uninvolved in galactic conflicts until now. Lyra's expression hardened with resolve. We must retrieve this artifact before they do. It could be the key to ending this war. John stood, the weight of his world's sudden significance settling on his shoulders. I'll lead the mission. Earth is my home. I know it better than anyone else here. Lyra stepped forward, placing her hand on John's arm. I will go with you. Together, we've already achieved the impossible. Plans were quickly made for their departure. The rebel leaders provided them with a small, stealthy craft specially equipped for the mission. The mood was one of cautious optimism as they prepared to embark on a journey that held the potential to shift the balance of power. As they left the outpost under the cover of darkness, the stars above mirrored the uncertainty and hope of the mission ahead. John and Lyra, now not only allies but friends, understood the stakes. Earth was not just a battlefield, but a turning point in their intertwined fates. The journey back to John's planet was not just a return home, but a stride towards a future they were starting to believe could be won. The journey back to Earth was tense, filled with the unspoken fears of what awaited them upon arrival. As their sleek, stolen Xandarian craft cut through the cosmos, John and Lyra reviewed their plans, going over every detail of what little they knew about the artifact and the possible defenses they might encounter. According to the intercepted messages, the artifact is hidden in the Great North Woods, John explained, pointing at the map displayed on the craft's screen. It's a remote area, dense with forests. Not many people go there, which might be why it's remained hidden for so long. Lyra nodded, her eyes tracing the contours of the landscape on the screen. The Xandarians believe the artifact has the power to amplify energy fields, potentially enough to disrupt starship operations or enhance them. Its power must be immense. We'll need to be quick and quiet to get in and out without drawing attention, John added, his voice low. Local authorities won't understand what's going on, and we can't risk a misunderstanding. The craft entered Earth's atmosphere under the cover of night, using cloud cover as concealment from any prying eyes or modern technology that might detect their approach. They landed in a secluded area, surrounded by the thick foliage of towering pines and underbrush. Equipped with only the essentials, John and Lyra set out on foot. The terrain was rough, familiar yet alien to John after his time away. The sounds of Earth's wildlife filled the air, a stark contrast to the silent void of space they had traversed. As they hiked, Lyra paused, her hand going to the device they had brought to locate the artifact. It pulsed softly, the rhythm quickening as they moved closer to their target. It's here, somewhere close, she whispered, excitement and anxiety mingling in her voice. The search led them to an ancient clearing where the ground dipped into a natural basin. In the center, half buried under moss and stone, was an obelisk-like structure, its surface covered in the same glyphs as the device they carried. This has to be it, John said, kneeling beside the structure. He brushed away the debris, revealing more symbols that glowed faintly under his touch. Suddenly, the ground shook, and the air crackled with energy. The artifact was activating, responding to their presence. Lyra and John exchanged a look of awe and fear as the obelisk pulsed stronger. Before they could further investigate, the sound of approaching vehicles tore through the silence of the woods. John's eyes narrowed. We've got company. Looks like the Xandarians aren't far behind. Quickly they concealed themselves as several armed figures emerged from the trees, their weapons scanning the area. The leader, a tall, imposing figure, walked directly towards the obelisk. Secure the artifact, he ordered his team. Prepare to extract it immediately. John and Lyra looked at each other, knowing they had to act fast. Making a split-second decision, John threw a small rock to the opposite side of the clearing, distracting the guards. Using the moment of confusion, John and Lyra attacked, taking down the guards with a combination of stealth and precise strikes. With the area secured, they approached the artifact. Lyra placed her hands on the surface, and the glyphs lit up, resonating with the device she held. A beam of light shot up into the sky, a signal of activation that could not be unnoticed. "We don't have much time," Lyra said, her voice tense. "We need to figure out how to use this to our advantage before more of them come." As they worked quickly to harness the artifact's power, they knew that the final confrontation was imminent. The battle to protect Earth and turn the tide against the Xandarian Syndicate was just beginning. Under the dense canopy of Earth's ancient woods, John and Lyra worked feverishly by the glowing obelisk, the artifact now fully awakened and pulsing with a powerful energy. They had managed to harness some of its capabilities, directing the energy into a defensive perimeter around the clearing. Just as they finished setting up, the sound of crashing through the underbrush signaled the arrival of more Xandarian forces, heavily armed and moving with lethal intent. The stakes couldn't be higher, and both John and Lyra knew that the outcome of this confrontation would determine the future of not just Earth, but potentially the galaxy. As the Xandarians encircled the clearing, John checked his weapons, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline he'd known in his military days. Lyra stood beside him, her expression resolute, her hands glowing faintly with the energy of the artifact. "This is it," John muttered, readying himself for the battle. Lyra nodded, her eyes meeting his. "Together." The Xandarians made their move, coming in fast and hard, but as they entered the perimeter, the artifact's energy surged, creating a barrier that slowed them down, disorienting the attackers. John and Lyra used this to their advantage, picking off the invaders one by one with precise, controlled attacks. Amidst the chaos, a new figure appeared, cutting through the disarray with an authoritative presence. It was the Galactic Emperor himself, his cloak billowing behind him, his face a mask of shock and anger. "Lyra!" he shouted, his voice booming across the clearing. "Cease this madness at once!" Lyra turned to face him, her stance defiant. "Uncle, you must see the truth. The Xandarians are destroying what our family has built. They are the true traitors, not I." The Emperor paused, taking in the scene. The fallen Xandarians, John standing protectively beside Lyra, and the ancient artifact pulsing with power. The weight of his niece's words and the evidence before him seemed to shift something within him. "You have allied with a primitive human?" he asked, disbelief coloring his tone. "This primitive human has shown more honor and bravery than your entire court," Lyra retorted, her voice strong. John stepped forward, not backing down from the Emperor's imposing figure. "Your Highness, we have uncovered a plot by the Xandarians to overthrow you using this artifact. They sought to use its power for themselves." The Emperor's gaze moved from John to the artifact and back to Lyra. Tension hung in the air as he considered their words. Finally, he lowered his head slightly, a sign of concession. "Show me this evidence," he commanded, his voice no longer booming but laced with a weary curiosity. Together, John and Lyra explained their findings, supported by the decrypted data from the Xandarian navigation device. As the truth became clear, the Emperor's expression hardened with resolve. "We must act to preserve our empire and protect our people," he declared, turning to address his remaining forces. "These rebels have shown great courage and loyalty to our true cause." The Emperor then faced John, extending a hand in an unprecedented gesture of gratitude. "You have saved not only my niece, but perhaps our entire civilization. How can we repay you?" John glanced at Lyra, then back at the Emperor. "Protect your people, Your Highness, and ensure that Earth remains free from your conflicts." The Emperor nodded, agreeing to the terms. "It shall be done." As the sun rose over the Earth, illuminating the clearing and the faces of those gathered, a new alliance was born, one that promised a brighter future. John and Lyra watched as the Xandarian forces were taken away, and the Emperor began plans to rebuild and reform. The battle was over, but their journey was just beginning. Together, they had changed the course of history. Now they would work to ensure peace and justice prevailed across the galaxies.